Lindy from Love Create Celebrate. Welcome back to our channel where we share all of our DIY and home renovation videos. If you have not subscribed to our channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the good stuff coming up. Today's video is a dollar store DIY video. I am sharing this dollar store DIY video as part of our dollar store DIY challenge. I am hosting this challenge with my friend Colleen from Colleen Pasteur, and she is going to be sharing some dollar store videos as well, so make sure to check hers out. I know they're going to be amazing. If you have a video to share, don't forget to drop it into the playlist, which is linked in my description box below. I can't wait to see what you guys have made too. This is Dollar Store DIY Challenge Spring Edition. It doesn't have to be spring DIYs. We just want to see how you're transforming dollar store products. For my video today, I made some home decor DIYs, and I have to tell you, they are some of my favorite projects I've ever done with dollar store product. I'm sharing 4 projects today. I love all 4 of them. I'm really happy with how they all turned out, so hopefully you guys like them too. Okay, let's get started. This is one of my favorite dollar store DIYs I've ever done, and it starts with these little wooden cups that I found at Dollar Tree. It's really hard to find affordable, cheap wooden rings, so when I saw these, I knew that I could cut some off the top and make my own. So I planned to cut an inch-wide ring off the top of each of these cups. I decided to use our table saw for this cut because I thought it would be the most stable, and I'm always super cautious because the table saw can be a really powerful tool. So what I did was cut halfway through my cups and then turn off the table saw, pull the cup out, turn it back on, and put the cup through the other way until I had a full slice come off. I only did half at a time because I felt like I would have more control. And if you're going to do this, make sure your table saw is fully off and the pieces stopped spinning before you pull your ring out, because it really can kick back and hurt you if it's still moving. I did this with all 6 of my cups until I had 6 1-inch rings. And then you can see there's a little bit of tear out on the edges, so I went through and sanded the edges of all 6 rings. Next, I wanted to put a tiny straight cut through my rings so that I would be able to open them and join them together to make a chain. I could have used a different saw for this, but we have a scroll saw, and I knew the scroll saw would put a really small slit in them, so that's the tool I chose to use. Then I did a quick test to make sure that they would link together and form a chain properly. In retrospect, I realized I only really had to cut through 3 of the links, and I could hook that one through each side, but this worked too. I wanted the chain to have a nice deep wood color, so I used dark walnut stain and stained all 6 pieces. Next, I hooked all of the pieces into one another to form my chain. The wood was actually pretty strong. I was being gentle, but it actually is strong for dollar store material, so I was impressed with that. Then when you have your chain together, you need to glue apart all of those openings so that it looks nice and continuous. You can use wood glue for this. I used some craft glue that I had on hand that I'll link in the description below. The reason I used this glue instead is just because I knew it would dry faster. I just put it on, wiped off any excess. I used my finger. You should probably use a rag or a cloth. And then I just held it for a few seconds and it set really quickly. Then once that one is set, you can move on and glue all of the rest together and your project is done. I am so in love with how this project turned out. The joy for me in doing dollar store DIYs is creating things that people don't know are from the dollar store, and I really think when people see this in my home that they'll have no idea I made it for only a few dollars. So happy with how it turned out. This next home decor project is super quick and easy, and yes, I am using plungers for it. When I saw these plungers in the store, what I noticed actually was the big wooden dowel on the end. These dowels can be expensive in the hardware store, and these plungers are super cheap. So if you have any ideas for how to use the bottom piece, let me know, but today I'm using the dowel. I also found this really simple scarf. It actually had a nice design, nice little tassels on the end. I did a no-sew DIY pillow with one of these scarves once, which I'll link here for you, but I had a different project in mind for this one. What I wanted to do was make some really affordable wall art by hanging the scarf like a tapestry. I started by measuring the amount of dowel I needed, which was 27 inches total. So I cut each of my plunger dowels down to 13.5 inches, so that together they would make 27. The side of the dowel that was at the top of the plunger actually already had nicely beveled and rounded edges, so I wanted to keep those sides on the outside of my hanging tapestry, and then I drilled small holes about 1 centimeter from the end all the way through the dowel so that I would be able to string some rope or leather cording through them. Then again, I used a strong craft glue, which I'll link below, to attach the two wooden dowels. And make sure that when you attach them, the holes you created for your string are both on the outside and that they're both facing the same direction so you can easily string through them. Then I pulled the scarf out, and since it had been all bunched up, it was actually very, very wrinkly. So I used the steamer to get most of these wrinkle marks out so that I'm ready to hang it up. Then I grabbed some leather cording from my craft stash and put it through both ends of my large dowel so that I would be able to hang it up on the wall. Here's what the final product looked like. I was so happy with this. I actually really like the colors in this scarf, and I think if you flipped it around, the pattern is slightly different and can add some different visual interest. But really, you could do this with any scarf, and for only a few dollars to have something displayed on your wall, I think that's a really affordable and beautiful DIY. For my next project, I picked up these square dowels from the dollar store. This is the first time I had seen them, and you know I love picking up anything made of wood at the dollar store, so I grabbed these, and I had this idea to make a sculpture with them. I was inspired by this Studio McGee sculpture, which I guarantee is heavier than the one I'm creating, but I'm just going for the look of the piece. And I knew with 3 of these wooden dowels, I could recreate it pretty nicely. So the first thing I had to do was mock up the design. I held it in place and then decided where I wanted to cut it, which was at 6 inches on each dowel. I wanted the amount of dowel sticking up from the top to be the same on each piece, so I marked 1.25 inches from the top on each of my square dowels so that I knew where I wanted them to stick out from. Then I did a quick mock-up with those measurements in place. You can see the line of my pencil is on the outside at the top, and that's how I wanted everything to sit. Now that I knew that it worked and sat properly, I was ready to glue everything together. I made sure that all the spacing was correct, and then I clamped them together with these mini clamps, which are actually super useful if you're doing little DIY projects like this. Then I glued the last dowel in place and clamped that one down as well. Finally, I wiped away any of the excess glue that I could get to so it wasn't dripping down. This wasn't a super important step because we were going to be painting it and it would cover up any glue marks, but I still wanted to get off as much as I could. The next day I spray painted the piece with this pure gold spray paint, and it took about 3 coats to get a really good finish on all of the sides. When the painting was done, I thought it looked a little bit too perfect and pure, and I wanted to make it look a little bit worn, a little bit older, and I did that just by applying some black paint. Because this had been painted with a glossy spray paint, you could easily wipe the black paint away, leaving it just a little bit left to give it that slightly antiqued look. And here is how this sculpture turned out. I am so happy with the final product. It's exactly what I envisioned. I think it looks beautiful, styled on a cabinet or some open shelving, and it was such an easy DIY to do. For my final home decor project, I'm going back to those plungers and using more of those wooden dowels. I also bought some smaller wooden dowels from the craft section of our dollar store, and together I'm going to use the two to make a beautiful planter. I had a spare pot at home that I could use for this, but if you don't, the dollar store also has some nice flower pots, so you could pick up one of those as well. I am using those plunger dowels for the 4 main legs of my planter, and again I wanted to use the nicer top end of the dowel for the nicer top end of the planter. The first job here was to get the proper scale, so I turned my pot around, put the pieces in place and did some measurements, decided that I wanted my legs of my planter to be 8.5 inches long, and then cut all 4 of those legs on my miter saw. The other thing I had to do was cut and set up the cross braces for my pot. To do this, I measured the total width of the pot, which was 7 inches in my case, and then I added 1/2 inch to that so that I would have a little bit to put into the dowel and just a little bit of extra space for the pot to move. So I ended up cutting each of those small dowels to 7.5 inches. And I also used that scaling to decide where to put my hole in the large dowel, which I chose to do at 6 inches from the top. Once I had everything cut, I drilled holes in 2 of the legs to start. I used a small drill bit just to put a pilot hole in first. I also put tape around the drill bit, as you can see, so that I wouldn't go in too deep. I only wanted it to go about 1/4 inch into the wood. Then I got out a larger drill bit that was the same size as the wooden dowels I was using and made a larger hole right in the same spot as my pilot hole on the dowel. also wanted my cross beams underneath to have a little bit more support, so I marked the halfway point on those dowels, and then I used my Dremel to make a little bit of an indent so that they would sit nicely on top of one another. Because of the way that these cross pieces stack, one of them will be a 1/4 of an inch above the other one, which means that the holes on your large dowels also need to be different. 2 of them will be at 6 inches and the other 2 need to be a 1/4 of an inch higher or lower than that. So once everything was cut, we did a dry fit just to make sure it would all sit properly with the pot in place, and then we glued everything together and let it sit overnight. Because these are going to be holding planters and likely going to get wet over time, you also want to be sure to protect them by giving them a couple coats of varnish. I'm so happy with how this guy turned out. You've probably seen these in stores. I've seen these planters everywhere, and to be able to make my own for less than $10 with dollar store supplies feels pretty good. This is definitely a piece that I will be using and decorating with all over the house. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope you liked the DIYs as much as I did. I'm honestly so happy with them. If you did, let me know. If you have a favorite, let me know in the comments below. And thank you to everyone who joined up with this video. If you want to join the playlist next time, the instructions are all in the last video and in the description box below, and you can join on June 5th. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below. And as always, hit the bell so you don't miss out on future DIY and home renovation videos. Don't forget to check out the other videos in the playlist, which is linked in the description box below. Thanks for watching!